Today on The Conservative Rebel, as rioters and arsonists continue to rampage through Los Angeles, assaulting law enforcement while they wave the flag of a foreign country, it's long past time for a national reckoning on immigration, both legal and illegal. Leftists love to claim third world immigrants benefit America because diversity is our strength. We'll discuss why diversity is actually our weakness and how much the left's insistence to the contrary has harmed our nation. Also, Republicans continue to slip away from the principles of free markets. Senator Josh Hawley, who now apparently wants to double the minimum wage, is just the latest example. I'll explain how stupid his idea is and why the minimum wage should be abolished. We'll talk about all of it on today's can't-miss episode of The Conservative Rebel. There are many stupid slogans the left likes to throw around, but if I had to create a list and rank them in terms of their stupidity, which might actually be kind of fun, I would definitely put the claim that diversity is our strength near the top of the list. Even though so-called conservatives, though they might protest DEI policies and anti-white discrimination to some extent, never challenge that fundamental premise. They never challenge the idea that diversity is a strength. In fact, many of them agree with it, whether they admit it to themselves and others or not. They just don't like racial discrimination, and rightly so they oppose so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion because they understand all too well that those are just code words for anti-white racism. But today we are going to challenge that premise because it's a stupid premise, and I'm sick of hearing people say stupid things, and I know I'm not the only one. Diversity is not our strength, it is one of our most fearful weaknesses. Unity, and not diversity, is the strength of any nation. The less unified you are, the weaker you will be, and the more unified you are, the stronger you will be. This is logic that most 3-year-olds could easily understand, but a lot of liberal adults seem to have a hard time comprehending. If you doubt that this is true, just look at the riots raging in LA. Why are foreign nationals rampaging through the streets of LA, torching vehicles and assaulting law enforcement while they torch our nation's flag, curse our president's name, and proudly wave the banner of a hostile nation as they do it? What is the reason for that? You can hardly look at that and say, you know what would fix that problem? More diversity. If we had more diversity, that would go away. No, that's precisely the problem. Disunity and diversity, which is another way of saying disunity, is the problem. Instead of being a united country with a unified culture and common values, we have become a heterogeneous blob of conflicting cultures and identities and loyalties. The main problem America has is not simply that so many of the immigrants in this country are here illegally, though that is definitely a problem and a very serious one. The real issue is much larger than that. It's that they have nothing in common with us by and large. Mass immigration has fractured and disunited our country, probably irreparably. We are too divided, which is another way of saying too diverse, because we have let millions of people from the third world flood into our country, both legally and illegally. So tensions and riots like this become inevitable. Now, there are dumb people out there who will listen to this and immediately think what I am saying is racist. But notice this. I said nothing about race, and I'm not going to. I did not say other racial groups are inferior or that I dislike them, and I don't think they are inferior, and I don't dislike them. So I don't want any dumb people in my comments calling me a racist for giving you the basic facts I am going to give you on this show, because they've been conditioned from childhood to react that way whenever they hear anyone dare to question orthodoxies like the one we're questioning today. The fact that diversity is a weakness and not a strength is a basic fact that everyone, everywhere, instinctively understood for all of human history until now. There has never been a nation in the history of the world that has become stronger because it became more diverse and disunited. There has certainly never been a nation so stupid and senseless that it bragged to the world about how its people had nothing in common with each other, as if it was some great strength, until just a few minutes ago in the scope of human history, when Western liberals decided to reject what had been common sense for all of humanity because it conflicted with their radical globalist and multicultural and anti-nationalist ideology. The strength of a nation has always been what its people have in common with each other. Shared religion and culture and history and traditions. That is what makes a nation. And not only that, it has always been understood that without those things, you can't really have a nation at all. The word nation comes from the Latin word natio, which means birth or to be born. That means a shared history and a shared ancestry, which in turn means shared cultural and religious traditions. This is what makes a nation a nation. You need to have those things. And if you look at early American history, it is precisely because we did once have those things that the Founding Fathers believed America could be successful as an independent country. In fact, one of the arguments that sold the states on the issue of ratifying the Constitution way back in the late 1780s and 1790s was that a more unified republic would be successful because the American people had all of these things in common. The Founding Father John Jay said this in the Second Federalist Paper, quote, "Providence has been pleased to give this one connected country to one united people, a people descended from the same ancestors, speaking the same language, professing the same religion, attached to the same principles of government, and very similar in their manners and customs." He called Americans, quote, "a band of brethren, united to each other by the strongest ties, that should never be split into a number of unsocial, jealous, and alien sovereignties." Essentially, John Jay was saying that the reason we can succeed as a nation is because we're all English-speaking Christians with a Christian European heritage. We all have the same values and believe basically the same things about religion and morality. We have a shared culture and a shared history. Therefore, it will be easy for us to unite and to stay united. That's the argument he was making. But nowadays, are any of those things true? Ask yourself, do we have a shared history and a shared ancestry? We don't. In fact, what little history we do have in common, we're taught to hate and to be ashamed of. Do we have a shared language? No, we don't. Almost 15% of the people living within our borders primarily speak Spanish. Some of them only speak Spanish. And the number is actually probably a lot more than that, given all the illegal aliens in the country, who obviously don't get counted for a lot of that stuff. Do we have a shared religion? No. Not only do we have over 200 Christian denominations in the United States, Nearly a third of the people in the United States are atheists, agnostics, or some other type of unreligious secularist, and almost 10% are Buddhists, Muslims, Hindus, Jews, or some other foreign religion. Do we have shared principles? Definitely not. Half the country thinks baby murder is great, and a significant number even deny the most basic principles of biological reality. We really cannot agree on anything. Do we have a shared culture? Certainly not. Shared manners and customs? No. We used to be able to check off every item on Jean Jay's list, but now we can't check off a single box. America is living through a devastating identity crisis where no one has a clue what America even is, or what an American is, or what American values are. The question we needed to ask a few years ago was, what is a woman? The question we need to ask now is, what is an American? How and why did this happen? How has America gone from a unified nation into precisely the thing John Jay said could never happen? Unsocial, jealous, and alien sovereignties. How do we have nothing in common with each other anymore? The answer is simple. Over the past few decades, and especially the past few years, America's leaders have allowed virtually unlimited numbers of foreigners, both legal and illegal, to pour into this country with no requirement at all that they even attempt to assimilate into our culture or adopt our customs. In fact, these people come from vastly different cultures, with vastly different religions and languages and beliefs. They oftentimes have absolutely nothing in common with us, and are usually only coming to benefit off of the greatness of our economy. This has been the scam that has been sold to the American people. And anyone who questioned any of it has been smeared as a racist and a xenophobe who hates immigrants. In short, America's leaders have, for the past few decades, been hell-bent on doing everything in their power to destroy America's culture and identity and replace the population with foreigners. This was a bipartisan scheme. Republicans were always talking about how great immigration was, and some of them still do, until Trump came along. Ronald Reagan infamously granted amnesty to millions of illegal aliens who were trespassing in our country, and his successors didn't really take any meaningful steps to stop the waves of Mexicans and other South and Central Americans who poured into our country thereafter. But that is not the only thing that destroyed America's identity. The process began when leftist progressive intellectuals came up with the absurd idea that America should have no identity or heritage of its own. Instead, it can only be defined as a melting pot, or a nation of immigrants, or some other term like that. Whereas it's very, very easy to define what English means, or what German means, or what Indian or Japanese means, being an American, we're supposed to believe, can mean anything. You could mean someone who is descended from people who were on the Mayflower, who's been here for 15 or 20 generations, or however long it's been, or you could mean the Somalian migrant who arrived here last Tuesday. They are both equally Americans by this theory. And this is what the public school system taught kids. This is what both political parties regurgitated whenever they were talking about immigration. So this is what Americans came to believe. So not only were they convinced that it was great and wonderful to let all these people come in and completely just destroy our identity and disunify this country. They were told that it is un-American to want America to have an identity of its own. It is un-American to advocate for America to continue to exist. We were told that America should have no culture of its own. Instead, it should be a blend of cultures from all across the world. It should have no language of its own. It should be a blend of languages across the world. It should have no religion of its own. It should be a blend of religions across the world. It should have nothing of its own, nothing to claim as part of its identity. Its entire definition should be a nation of immigrants. American means anyone who is within the borders of the United States. Doesn't matter when they came here, doesn't matter their legal status, doesn't matter any of that. And once Americans were convinced to adopt this self-destructive mentality, all that they had to do was open up the floodgates and let all these people come in. And it was not until, really, Trump ran that people began to realize what was happening. Unchecked immigration, both legal and illegal, has transformed the United States from a cohesive, unified nation with a shared identity, religion, culture, history, and value system into a fractured post-national empire whose subjects have incompatible religions and cultures and no shared identity at all. This fact is not a triumph that we should celebrate, it is a tragedy that we should mourn. Because a nation without identity, or culture, or values, or religion, or history, or anything else that makes a nation is not really a nation at all. It cannot survive and doesn't deserve to. It is doomed to eternal division and disunity and strife until the inevitable day comes when it collapses entirely. And that is the day that the elites have been working for a very long time. Because the day that America dies, the day that the nations of Europe die, is the day that the globalist order begins. Once you destroy the concept of nationhood, you have nothing left but to unify the entire world under a one-world government. You no longer become a citizen of your country, you become a citizen of the world. You become divorced from protecting the interests of your family and your community and your country first. That is also why they have been attacking the family. They want to destroy all structure in people's lives. They want to atomize the individual, divorce him from his family, divorce him from his church, divorce him from his nation, divorce him from all meaning and structure and authority until you create a sea of miserable, stupid, meaningless people who will be easy to enslave. Divide and conquer. Break everything down. Destroy civilization. Destroy the family. Destroy Christianity. Destroy nationhood. And that is when these scheming globalists can finally claim power. So it's time that we end this stupid charade of diversity being our strength and celebrating our differences and celebrating the things that tear us apart and divide us, and finally try to begin to reclaim our heritage and to reclaim our national identity. This is a fundamental issue, and you cannot exaggerate how important this is. This is one of the most consequential issues in the world, and we have to get this right, or Western civilization will die, and the entire world will turn into the Third World. This is what the battle over immigration and deportations comes down to. This is the difference between Donald Trump and Americans of sense, and between the foreign barbarians who are burning down Los Angeles. These are the two conflicting visions: a vision of national sovereignty and preserving civilization and maintaining the things that instill meaning and happiness into our lives, and a battle between people who want to atomize individuals and remake the world into their image, to destroy all structure and all authority and all morality and all meaning, and usher in a post-national globalist dystopia. That's what this comes down to. If America wants to continue to survive as a nation, it needs to reclaim its identity and its unity. It needs to stop all this talk about diversity and division being great, and it needs to focus on restoring our shared values and the things we have in common, because it just dies if we don't. All right, time for a change of pace. Now that we've gotten through the bad news part of the show, we can move on to some more bad news. It's always nice to have more than one thing to be angry about, more than one thing to evaporate the joy and happiness from your day. So here's another bonus bad news story. I hope you enjoy it. You know, I really do hate to keep tearing Republicans to shreds like I had to last week over the big beautiful bill. Or, hate is a strong word. Let's just say I enjoy tearing Republicans to shreds slightly less than I enjoy tearing Democrats to shreds, because I'm a right-winger myself, in fact, much further to the right than most people. But Republicans won't stop doing stupid things. If they just agree to stop being stupid, I wouldn't have to keep doing this, but they've committed to continuing in their stupidity by all appearances. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri has a new proposal seemingly designed with the explicit purpose of annoying me. And that proposal is to almost double the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which I oppose because I believe that people should not earn a living wage and should have to beg on the city streets in rags for food, because I am a capitalist, so that's what I think. CBS reports, quote, Missouri GOP Senator Josh Hawley plans to introduce legislation Tuesday to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 per hour, a position that aligns one of the most conservative lawmakers on Capitol Hill with some of the most liberal members of Congress. The legislation, called the Higher Wages for American Workers Act, would raise the federal standard starting in 2026 and would also call for an increase in subsequent years. Josh Hawley said in a statement, "For decades, working Americans have seen their wages flatline. One major culprit of this is the failure of the federal minimum wage to keep up with the economic reality facing hard-working Americans every day. This bipartisan legislation would ensure that workers across America benefit from higher wages." I hate this, and I hate it a lot, and you might be wondering why. You might think, who would be opposed to higher wages for American workers? It's right there in the name of the bill. That must be what the bill does. Are you against higher wages for American workers? Of course not, but, the minimum wage, which is just like tariffs, which we talked about a few weeks ago, sounds great, but it doesn't live up to how it sounds. The minimum wage is like those home-baked, sugar-free, gluten-free muffins that the health freak in your life likes to bake. On the surface, they look great, they smell great, your stomach is grumbling, you're hungry, so you can't resist trying it. But to your horror, when you bite into one of the muffins, it's parched and dry and lifeless. Sometimes it even has spinach smuggled into the middle of it. Suddenly, in one horrible moment, you realize you are not eating a muffin. You're eating a lie. In a similar way, all this talk of higher wages and affordability for hardworking Americans and fairness makes raising the minimum wage sound like a great thing. But like that fake muffin, it's all a lie. To understand why, we need to clear a few things up, starting with the term minimum wage, which is deceptive propaganda designed to muddy the waters of the situation to stop you from thinking rationally about it. People say the minimum wage in America is $7.25 an hour federally and more than that in certain states. But while we do have a so-called minimum wage law that forces employers to pay at least $7.25 an hour to their employees, that's not the real minimum you can be paid. The real minimum wage is always zero. In a sense, a minimum wage does not exist and cannot exist because no one owes you or anyone else a job, and no one is legally obligated to give you a job if you're looking for one. And even if you have a job, you can always be fired from it. You can always end up in a situation where you're making no money at all. If the government did have the godlike power to suddenly make every person in the country wealthier, obviously that would be a great thing. I'd still probably get up on the podcast and condemn it just to be a contrarian, but objectively it would be a great thing. Just like it would be a great thing if the government would pass a law ending all poverty and crime and war and sorrow and unhappiness, or erasing miscellaneous evils like Crocs and gluten-free muffins and nose piercings and poodles and hip-hop music from the face of the earth. But the government does not have godlike power like that. And even if it did, it would use it against us and not for us. It's stupid and useless to sit here focusing on what we wish the government could do and what problems we wish the government could solve. Just like it's useless and stupid if you lost your job to sit on the porch doing nothing because you wish some magical genie would appear and shower you in $10 million cash. Our focus should be what the government actually can do, and out of the things it can do, what it should do. The second thing we have to understand, again, we talked about this on the episode where we discussed tariffs, is the zero-sum fallacy, which Thomas Sowell talks about in Basic Economics, which you should read. The zero-sum fallacy is the belief that in a free and voluntary economic transaction, there's a winner and there's a loser. Obviously, there are winners and losers in unfree transactions, like taxes, where the government forces you to pay them half of everything you earn and destroys your life and locks you in a cage if you refuse. But in the case of an employer and an employee, unlike a taxpayer and the government, the transaction is free and voluntary. No one is forcing you to bag groceries. Why are you doing it then? Because you value the money you're making more than the amount of labor you're giving up for it. In turn, the store that hired you values the labor you're giving them more than the money it's giving you. If either of you decided that it wasn't worth it to you anymore, then what you were giving up was more valuable than what you were getting in return. You could stop it in a second. Quit. Fire the guy. Those are the options that the various parties have. But you don't really think that. You do not really think that it's not worth it, which is why every morning you brush your teeth, get dressed, and show up to work, and why every so often the company you're working for gets out a pen and writes you a check. You don't like working, and the company that you work for doesn't like paying you, but both of you are benefiting and none of you are losing. But when the government thrusts itself into the middle of a free and voluntary transaction, it ruins everything. It cannot make the working class suddenly wealthier with so-called minimum wage laws. All it can do is make the transactions unfree. It cannot raise the minimum wage from $0, as I already explained. So what do these laws really do then? They outlaw jobs. They ban all jobs that pay under a certain amount. That is exactly what so-called minimum wage laws do. We should not be surprised when minimum wage laws increase unemployment, because that's the only thing they could possibly do. Their very purpose is to destroy jobs that pay under X arbitrary hourly wage that the government randomly decided was necessary. A national minimum wage of $15 an hour is a national ban on all jobs that are worth less than $15 an hour, which includes a lot of side jobs that college kids or teenagers might do over the summer that simply are not worth $15 an hour. This is probably the first time you have ever heard a broke teenager explain to you why the minimum wage should be abolished. But this is what I think, because it is so obvious to me. You might say, oh no, the government's not outlawing jobs. That's not what it's doing. All it's doing is making the company pay the people more. Okay then, genius, by that logic, if we want to end all poverty instantly and raise the standard of living instantly and make everyone rich and happy and content, we could just raise the minimum wage to $1 million per hour, as a lot of people have pointed out, and then all of that would be gone. Instantly, you would completely overcome poverty, and everyone would have mansions and Tesla Cybertrucks and indoor pools and hot tubs and all of that type of thing. Instantly, you'd do that. But, of course, the reason you don't say that is because you know that it would be impossible to pay $1 million per hour. Companies do not have that kind of money. Instead, all jobs everywhere would disappear. No one would be paid anything because there simply is not a job on the planet that is worth $1 million an hour. And companies don't have that kind of money. So, if you raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, you do the exact same thing, just to a lesser extent. Companies that are now forced to pay $15 an hour will immediately begin looking for costs to cut. That means people to fire, jobs to replace with AI, and to automate and to replace with machines. They'll start cutting corners other places. They'll raise prices to compensate for the price of labor that's gone up. Just look at what happened in California with their $20 an hour fast food minimum wage law. Now fast food is a whole lot more expensive in California suddenly. Wonder why that happened. Because they increased the price of labor with their minimum wage jobs. So all you are doing and all you can do with a minimum wage job is kill jobs, kill employment, increase unemployment, accelerate automation and the replace of human workers with AI, increase prices, and reduce quality. Do any of those things sound good to you? No, they are terrible. Every single thing on the list is terrible. And this is a thing that conservatives used to understand. But suddenly, everyone is rejecting free market economics and is suddenly falling for all the socialist fallacies that have destroyed our lives and resulted in an oppressive government that sucks the life out of the economy by taking half of everything we earn in taxes. And yet, Josh Hawley is starting to talk like Bernie Sanders because he thinks it will make him popular with his constituents. In reality, all it will do is harm them, and harm the rest of the country as well. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Conservative Rebel. Please like, subscribe, comment, and leave a review. I'll talk to you next week.